Hey everybody, I wanted to show you real quickly how to import files into After Effects so that you can work with them. One thing to note is that as you work within the After Effects interface, you have different panels and you can tell which one is active by whether or not there's a little blue box showing up around that. So you can activate different panels. You're going to get different results from some of these menus up here depending on what panel you have active. So let's all just make sure we're on the same page, and let's click one time within the project window in the top left corner so that we get a colored highlight around it. So just like with any of the Adobe products, there are more than one way to bring in files or images or things that you want to work with. So we'll start off with the simplest way, and that is to go under the File pull-down menu. We'll select Import, and we'll choose File. I've created a folder on my desktop with a bunch of different things that we can use for this particular part. So if I take a quick look at this, I've got a folder here, I've got an audio file, I've got a JPEG file, I've got a movie file, I've got an image that I created in Illustrator, and I've also got a layered Photoshop file. So I'm going to start off really simple, and I'm just going to grab this JPEG file. This is an image I made for my boss. He asked me for this for an introductory website thing. So I'm just going to select that. Down here at the bottom, you do have some other things that you may have to work with. In our case, in this particular one, we're not going to change anything. But we can enable all acceptable files. We've got all these different options. I'm just going to leave it this way. It tells me what format it is. I know what it is because I can see the extension up here, but it tells me it's a JPEG. This is grayed out. This is the only other thing I can select, and I don't want to do that. I want to leave that blank. So let's go ahead and click Open. So now we have something in our project window. I actually have an image right there. As I click on it, it will show me a little thumbnail, very low res thumbnail up here. It'll tell me the dimensions of that object. It will tell me what the color model is, all that kind of stuff right there for me to make life pretty easy. So the way that we brought that in, we went under the File menu and we chose Import. Well, I'm going to show you a couple of quicker, easier ways to do that. Just in a blank area right here, if you will double click, which is your left mouse button if you have a multi-mouse button, if you will double click right in that blank area, you will also get an import window. Works exactly the same way as the other one did. Let's get something different this time. Let's bring in an audio file. So I'm going to grab the Gears Sound 1-2 AIF. That's an audio file. I'm going to leave that as it is. It tells me it's an AIF file and all this is grayed out. So great. I'm going to click Open and bring that in. So now I can tell as I click on those files, that one has a thumbnail. This one has a waveform, which tells me that it is an audio file. It also tells me some of the settings for the audio. So let's do one other way of importing files down here. The last time I showed you, I did the double click with the left standard mouse button. I'm going to right click or control click with my mouse, and I'm going to choose Import File. I don't know why, but this is the way that I kind of gravitate to. For some reason, I do this way most of the time. I have an Illustrator file here called spirograph.ai. I'm going to select that. It's going to show me a little thumbnail over here. It's actually white over a blank background, so that's why you can't see it here. But everything here is the same. We do want to kind of pay attention to this. This isn't important right now, but it is something that depending on how you want to work with a file, you might want to make a change here. So at this point, we've got two options that show up, one called Composition, one called Composition Retain Layer Sizes. We're not going to mess with them right now. I just want you to be aware that they're there. We're going to keep it as footage, and we're going to choose Import. So we're going to bring that in, and now you can see the thumbnail of it because in After Effects, it shows me that file over a black background. So we got three things here already. Let's go ahead and bring in a couple other things in a couple different ways. So I'm going to double click again in this box, and that will bring my import in. What if I was really well organized and I had everything I was going to work with in a folder and I knew I wanted to bring all of those elements in at one time? Well, I've actually done that. I've created a folder here. It's got the same things inside the folder that were kind of sitting out here loose before. But I've got all 5 of those things right there for me. I can select that folder. Everything else is grayed out down here, no options. So I can click Open, and it will bring that entire folder, excuse me, into After Effects for me. And then I can see I have all of those same elements in that folder sitting there waiting for me to work with them. So on to the last part, and this probably is the most important part. This is one of those things that's going to take a little bit of time to get your head wrapped around. But for those of us who work in motion graphics quite a bit, as we create our assets, very often we will create assets to use in After Effects in exactly the size we want to use them. So the cool thing about this is if I create a layered file in Photoshop or a layered file in Illustrator, I can bring that layered file in. After Effects will recognize it and treat it as a full composition where each layer is an individual thing that I can animate all by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and double click inside this window again, and I'm going to select this file right here. It's called strap.psd. It's a layered Photoshop file. You guys can see a little representation of it right here, but it's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And the nice thing is I created this ahead of time with the assumption that I was going to work with it and I was going to animate those different parts. So here's where things get a little bit different. Again, it's going to take you some time working with it to really understand it. I could import it as footage. If I do that, it will actually flatten that Photoshop file and I won't be able to go in and animate those individual parts. In this particular case, that is not what I want to do. My next option is import as a composition. That's getting me there, but I know that I've done something special here and I want to be able to work with it. So composition would bring this in as a layered Photoshop file. Everything would be recognized in After Effects and I could animate each of those individual parts all by themselves. But like I said, I did something different with this file. So I'm going to choose Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. This part's really important and I'll show you why here in just a second. So that's selected. I'm going to click Open. It's going to ask me layer options. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it set to editable layer styles and I'm going to click OK. So now I have something over here that doesn't look like anything else. This is the icon that represents a composition. A composition is what you're going to work with as you create things in After Effects. A composition will contain timing, will contain keyframes, and all the things that will allow you to animate within After Effects. So this is what that looks like. It also creates a folder for me where each one of those individual layers from the original Photoshop file are all recognized here in After Effects as individual things. I don't really have to worry about what's in the folder because all of that is inside my composition. So I can just double click it and open it. And now I can see I've got all of these different parts here. Everything that you see up here that's an individual part is going to show up down here as an individual part, which means that I can animate each of those things independently of the others. Here's the thing that really kind of sets this apart. In our world, this is sort of an idea of it being a conveyor belt, this little horizontal bar right here. So the goal was to create something that we could move from left to right across the scene as if it was a conveyor belt in a factory, and maybe we'll make that little logo right along on top of it. So if I come down here to my list, I know what that is called. I know that it's called the belt. And here's the thing. You guys can see from here to here based on my composition window. But there's something that you don't know until you go looking for it. With that item selected, you're able to see from here to here, but I can actually tell because I can see this bounding box around it. That conveyor belt goes way over here. It's over double the width of the composition. And the reason for doing that is so that I can move it from the left side to the right side, and I have enough so that I don't run out of conveyor belt within the time span that I want to work with. So when I chose Retain Layer Sizes, it actually allows me to keep something that is larger than my composition. If I had chosen import this as a composition and I didn't have the Retain Layer Sizes selected, it actually would cut that off right there on either side of it and I wouldn't have enough of it to move around. So when we say Retain Layer Sizes, it keeps all of the sizes of the things that you've created ahead of time in After Effects, in Photoshop, or possibly even in Illustrator.